Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is Frederick Randall, once again making another video. First take only, I might add. Yes. Just to talk about some various things that have been on my mind, and as you may be able to guess, it's about politics. And it's going to be about the POTUS, or President of the United States, if you didn't know what it stood for. If you can't tell, just to give you a little update about me, I'm growing out my hair. It's just letting it grow out a little natural and just see what happens. And it's pretty soft. I enjoy it. I know that may not sound like the most masculine thing in the world to talk about my hair and everything, but it's something I'm proud of. You know, it's growing, it's natural, it's healthy, it's softer, and because of the products that I have to put in there in order for it to smell good, it smells pretty good. So yeah, so it does it pretty good. And but yeah, if you, I'm going to talk about the president, and this is mostly a reactionary or a late reactionary video made in response to the president speaking at the National Defense University in Washington D.C. a couple of days ago. The major things that I'm going to talk about is just going to be the main things that he sort of focused on, and that's sort of were the hot button issues of the day. Firstly, I'm going to talk about Guantanamo Bay. Um, that's a major issue that's caused a lot of problems within the legal system in the United States, especially the legislative branch and the gridlock, of course, as we know, between the Republicans and Democrats that exist and has been existing for some time. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump on in. I'm glad to see that Guantanamo Bay is finally being closed because at this point I really feel like with all the cudgets, not cudgets, all the cuts that we're trying to make, and the budgetary problems that we're having in the United States, the last thing that we need to have to focus on is trying to keep open and in full operation a military prison installation on foreign soil that is not our ally. So I'm glad to see that closed. Of course, it's expensive to maintain a prisoner, as evident from the fact it takes about $1 million to maintain a prisoner within the United States just by itself. Let alone let's talk about transportation costs, feeding costs, the cost of security, the cost of just the personnel there. Just all of the things that go into factoring the cost that it takes to maintain one prisoner at Guantanamo Bay, and so that's kind of expensive. And also the fact that it's not our soil, it's not an ally of our soil that we're stationed on, or that we have it on, that we have the military installation there on. So I'm glad to see that's closing. I'm glad to see that we're off of that. The next thing that Obama did speak about at the at the meeting was the drone strikes. I'm glad to see that democracy is once again, or the United States' democracy is holding strong once again, and I say that in response to the drone strikes. Those drone strikes against the American citizens, I'm sort of glad to see, not sort of, I'm glad to see that they're actually going to try them before just sort of just blowing them up and killing them. And with that said, the president said that they would get a trial unless they pose an immediate threat that they cannot handle immediately in a fashion that would be able to get them, pretty much in other words, brought to the United States. First captured, brought to the United States, and given a proper trial. If they can't do that, then yeah, they'll make the necessary actions, to eliminate that threat. So be it a missile coming out of the sky and blowing up heavens knows how much stuff, with collateral damage and whatnot. But they'll going to try to ensure that they give the American citizen a fair trial, because after all, you have the right to your accuser. You have to, even if it's treason, espionage, or whatever, you still have the right to court and day in court. So that's a good day for justice. So yeah, I'm glad to see that happened. And let's see. Yeah, so he talked about the drone strikes. He talked about the closing of Guantanamo Bay, and then a big one. Finally, after 12 years of being at war with terror, we're finally going to end that war. I'm so glad we're going to end that war, because it was a stupid war from the beginning. I understand it's reactionary, but it was a stupid way to wage war. I will give credit to former President Bush, and say that he did not say that we were just going to go to war on Islam, because that was sort of, we had a huge, and still kind of do, have a huge contingent of people in the United States who are anti-Islamic and feel that they are all hostile, that all of them are extremists and are trying to kill the United States or in the United States, wreck everything in the United States. So I give him credit for that. But to go to war on terror, not so much of a good idea. Not so much of a good idea. So I'm glad to see that's finally ending. That's a lot of money that we spent. That's a lot of unnecessary bodies that have had to fall. American allies and the enemy who have died in the process. I'm glad to see that has ended. That was a lot of money that was spent. A lot of people had to be relocated. It was a very costly wars that we had to be involved with. And I'm just glad to see it's ended. I'm glad to be able to see people are coming home, and I'm also glad to see that the veterans who served in both Iraq and Afghanistan are going to see and receive better care, quality of care, in the wake of these two wars than they have in history. And I'm not talking about contemporary history. I'm talking about history in general. Ever since Abraham Lincoln made the major push to take care of the veterans of the Civil War, I'm glad to see that. Now they're finally going to be treated for PTSD. They're going to be reviewed for it. I'm glad to see that. So that's something I'm glad to see. I'm glad to see the war on terror ending finally, and I'm glad to see that the veterans are going to actually receive better treatment, and they're going to try to integrate the systems so that the personnel, so that the war departments are able to communicate a lot more efficiently and effectively with the Veteran Affairs Department, so that the files aren't lost or whatever, all the problems that have been occurring with those files. I'm just glad to see that. So, it was a great speech. It was a landmark. I won't say landmark, but it's a speech that will be recorded in the annals of history whenever people do speak accurately about President Barack Obama. So I'm glad to see that ended. So overall, that's how I felt. I'm glad to see that the war has ended. I'm glad to see that people the people are going to actually see a day in trial, as long as they're not posing an imminent threat to the United States. I'm glad to see that Guantanamo Bay is going to be closed. I'm pretty sure there's something else that's pretty important that I may have missed. I remember there were 4 things I was going to speak about, but the 4th one escaped me. But those 3 right there are pretty powerful, and so I'm glad to see those three that I listed coming to an end, and I'm glad to see the veterans are receiving better care. So yeah. So once again, y'all, if you all like what I have to say, disagree with what I have to say, comment. If you want to hear some more about what I have to say in the future when I post videos, subscribe. And please believe, if I see something on your page that I like, I'm mostly looking at professional pages, but I do like some goofy stuff. I like Team 4-Star. I like listening to jazz. I like listening to, different things. So I subscribe to things like that. And so yeah, if you have something interesting to say that isn't just so way out there, this freedom of speech thing is free. So yeah, I'll, depending on what you have to say and depending on what you're doing on your page, I'll like it, subscribe, and I'll comment. I believe in reciprocating what I ask for. So yeah, thank you all for listening once again, and this has been a random moment.